Hello, my name is Philippe Girard. I am a professor in the history department at McNeese State University.
And I am Amber Hale, an assistant professor in the biology department. Welcome to Your Grandma Rocks, where we explore the lives of famous women in history.
Welcome and bienvenue à nos amis francophones. Ceci est la radio de l'Université McNeese.
On the program today, music and history as we retrace the life of a remarkable woman. She was the highest paid movie actress in Hollywood. She introduced the U.S. public to samba music, and she wore some crazy, fruity hats. Her name was Carmen Miranda.
Along the way, we will sample some songs by Carmen Miranda and other Brazilian singers. We will start with the 1964 hit, The Girl from Ipanema, featuring Astrid and João Gilberto, I'm not sure I got that right, and Stan Getz. It's one of the most famous Brazilian songs of all time and a favorite of elevator music.
Walking, and when she passes, each one she passes goes when she walks, she's like a samba that swings so cool and sways so gently that when she passes, each one she passes goes oh, but he watched her so sadly. She walks to the sea. She looks straight ahead, not at him.
In case you were wondering, you are not standing in an elevator. You are listening to Your Grandma Rocks on KBYS. This was The Girl from Ipanema, named after the fancy neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro. My name is Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. Today, we're exploring the life of the Brazilian actress and singer, Carmen Miranda.
Her full name was Maria do Carmo Miranda da Cunha, and she was actually born in Portugal, not Brazil.
But in 1909, when she was just a baby, her parents immigrated to Brazil, which is where Carmen Miranda grew up.
Her childhood was not the easiest. Her parents had 6 kids and little money, so when Carmen's sister contracted tuberculosis, she had to take a job to help pay for her sister's medical bills. And so Carmen worked in a tie shop and later in a millionaire's boutique, and that's where she learned how to make hats.
I guess that's where Carmen Miranda got her passion for extravagant hats, which later became part of her signature outfit.
Unfortunately, radio is not a very visual medium, so we cannot show you pictures of her tutti frutti hats. Instead, I recommend that you watch the 1995 documentary about Carmen Miranda entitled Bananas is My Business, which includes footage of her famous dance numbers.
Her hats were not just part of some silly outfit. They had real cultural significance. They paid homage to the poor black women who sold fruit on the markets of the city of Bahia.
Brazil has a strong African influence dating back to the days of the slave trade, so African rhythms also influenced Carmen's music. Even though she was white and Portuguese-born, she embodied the multi-racial past of the country.
In many ways, she was predestined to become a singer.
Her father named her Carmen after the famous opera by Georges Bizet, and there was a lot of music in the Miranda household.
But her father gave her a conservative Catholic education, and he was infuriated when he learned that Carmen had auditioned for a radio show and planned to make a career in music.
He even beat her mother for allowing Carmen to audition.
That kind of domestic abuse was unfortunately all too common.
And still is. But Carmen persevered, and in 1929 she recorded her first single. It was a great success, and her career took off immediately. By the 1930s, she was the best paid radio singer in all of Brazil.
Could we listen to some of that music? I'm familiar with the songs from her Hollywood career, but not her early work.
We sure can. In 1939, she was featured in the film Banana da Terra in Brazil. It's in that film that she first appeared in her signature dress and turban while singing the song O que é que a Baiana tem, meaning what does a woman from Bahia have?
O que é que a baiana tem?
O que é que a baiana tem?
Tem torso de seda, tem. Tem brinco de ouro, tem. Corrente de ouro, tem. Tem pano da costa, tem. Tem pata rendada, tem. Pulseira de ouro, tem. E tem saia engomada, tem. Tem sandália enfeitada, tem. E tem graça como ninguém.
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Como ela requebra bem.
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Quando você se requebrar, caia por cima de mim, caia por cima de mim, caia por cima de mim.
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Mas o que é que a baiana tem?
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
O que é que a baiana tem?
Tem torso de seda, tem.
Tem?
Tem brinco de ouro, tem.
Ah,
Corrente de ouro, tem.
que bom.
Tem pano da costa, tem.
Tem?
Tem bata rendada, tem.
Que demais.
Pulseiras de ouro, tem.
Tem?
Tem saia engomada, tem.
Tem?
Sandália enfeitada, tem.
Só vai no bom fim quem tem.
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Só vai no bom fim quem tem.
O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Um rosário de ouro, uma bolotazinha que não tem balangandãs, não vai no bom fim. O que não tem balangandãs, não vai no bom fim.
Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. O que é que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Só vai no bom fim quem
O que é
tem.
que a baiana tem? O que é que a baiana tem?
Só vai no bom fim quem
O que é que a baiana tem?
tem. Um rosário de ouro, uma bolotazinha que não tem balangandãs, não vai no bom fim. O que não tem balangandãs, não vai no bom fim.
Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim. Oi, não vai no bom fim.
Welcome back. I'm Amber Hale, co-host of Your Grandma Rocks, your favorite women's history show on KBYS. Here with me is my colleague, Philippe Gerard.
We just listened to an early song by Carmen Miranda, whose life we are retracing today.
By the 1930s, she was a big star in Brazil, both as a singer and an actress.
Her success was closely tied to the rise of Brazilian cultural nationalism under President Getúlio Vargas. Her outfits celebrated black market women of Bahia. Her music, samba, was based on African musical traditions imported through the slave trade, and from there to Rio de Janeiro. And she embraced the carnival culture of Rio.
In fact, some of her earliest appearances on screen are in documentaries and musicals set during Rio's Carnival. Her natural talent shone through, and she stole the show.
Carmen Miranda was so successful that in 1939 she was hired by a Broadway impresario who saw her perform in a club in Rio, and he wanted her to join the show on Broadway.
She accepted, but on one condition. She wanted to bring her Brazilian band with her. She didn't think that an American band could play real, authentic samba music. That would remain a theme of her life, how to have a successful career abroad while remaining true to the musical traditions of her homeland.
The impresario complained about the cost of bringing the whole orchestra with her to New York, but President Vargas of Brazil stepped in, and he paid for the musician's ticket. He figured that Carmen Miranda would raise the profile of Brazil in the US and help boost exports, whether it was for music or for coffee.
Brazil had been dragged down by the Great Depression, and in a way, the whole country was relying on Carmen Miranda to revive its fortunes.
You might think of Carmen Miranda as that silly singer with her tutti frutti hats, but her career was surprisingly political, both in Brazil and abroad. In Brazil, she was seen as the person who introduced the country to international audiences. Meanwhile, in the US, President Franklin Roosevelt was hoping to find new markets for US products and to secure allies in the event of a war with Germany. So he developed a good neighbor policy to promote good relationships with Latin America.
So Carmen Miranda became Brazil's cultural ambassador, as well as the embodiment of the good neighbor policy in the U.S.
But her first appearance on Broadway actually had little to do with Brazilian culture. It was some kind of cheesy show loosely based on a Paris revue.
French can-can and that sort of thing?
Oui, oui!
Ooh la la!
The show was poorly reviewed by critics in New York City because it was so tacky, but all the commentators were impressed by Carmen Miranda's performance.
For Time magazine, she was the oomph that stops the show.
Hollywood noticed the success of the woman they called the Brazilian bombshell, and she was hired by 20th Century Fox.
That was the beginning of the most successful part of her career, the one that made her a household name in Hollywood and in the U.S.
We'll pause for a second and listen to some music from that Hollywood period. I selected Chica Chica Boom Chick from the 1941 musical That Night in Rio.
O meu ganza faz tica-tica-bum tica pra eu cantar o tica-tica-bum tica com a canção do tica-tica-bum tica. Meu coração faz tica-tica-bum tica e vem a saudade da Bahia, onde o samba tem canjere também numa batucada. Tic-tic-bum, tic-tic-tic-bum, tic-tic-bum, tic-tic-tic-bum. É brasileiro o tica-tica-bum tic, com o pandeiro fazendo tica-bum tic. E para terminar o tica-tica-bum, vocês devem cantar o tica-tica-bum, tica-tica-bum e tica-tica-bum, tica-tica-bum tic. You don't make sense, the tica-tica-boom chick, but it's immense, the tica-tica-boom, a-tica-boom. That's all you've got to say. Who chase the jingles away? Tica-tica-boom, 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 tica-boom, tica-boom, boom, boom, tica-boom, tica-boom, boom, 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 tica-boom.
Welcome back to Your Grammar Rocks on KBYS. I am Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. Today we're covering the life of Brazilian singer and actress Carmen Miranda. You just listened to Chica Chica Boom Chick from the movie That Night in Rio.
Just before our break, we had reached the point where Carmen Miranda was discovered by Hollywood agents.
Her first movie project was Down Argentine Way, released in 1940. The movie was set in Argentina, but it was shot on a lot in Los Angeles. Carmen Miranda was not even in LA with the other actors. She was still finishing other engagements on Broadway, so she shot her scenes in New York, and the editor simply inserted them into the finished movie. This could be done because her role was purely a singing one, and she had no dialogue with the other actors.
That movie immediately set a pattern. Even though she became a major Hollywood star, she remained stuck in non-acting roles. Typically, the Anglo stars would stop at a club or a cafe during the course of the movie, and out came Carmen Miranda for her trademark dance number. And then the quote-unquote real actors would take it from there, and she would slip away.
Her portrayal of an Argentinian also raised some eyebrows.
Yes, people in Argentina didn't appreciate that Hollywood hired a Brazilian woman to portray their country. And they also complained that Hollywood was lumping together Argentina and Brazil and confusing samba with tango. Also, a lot of the Argentine characters in the movie spoke broken English, and they were portrayed as lazy and ignorant. So the movie was banned in Argentina for being culturally insensitive. But it did gross $2 million in the US.
That would remain Carmen Miranda's main difficulty as her career took off in Hollywood. In order to appeal to American audiences, she had to exploit U.S. stereotypes of Latin America. But by doing so, she was accused of selling out back home.
But that did not stop her. She capitalized on the vogue for Latin American themes, and she appeared in 8 movies during World War II, many of them great commercial successes.
Earlier, we listened to a song from That Night in Rio, which was a major hit in 1941. After that success, she was asked to leave her handprints and footprints on the sidewalk at the Chinese Theater.
And then she starred in Weekend in Havana. That film immediately shot to #1 in the charts, displacing the movie that had occupied that spot before that.
And what was the name of that movie that she beat out?
Just a little home movie called Citizen Kane by Orson Welles.
Wow, Tutti Frutti beats Rosebud, I guess.
That's right. Her next big role was The Gang's All Here in 1943. It was the most expensive film of the year, but it was a box office success. It's mostly remembered today for its lavish dance numbers, which you have to see on the big screen to really appreciate them in all their technicolor extravagance.
That's the one where she dances with giant bananas, right?
Yes, again, that was not the most nuanced portrayal of Latin American culture. One movie critic even wondered if there was something Freudian about the director's obsession with big bananas.
Well, we best not dig too deep into that matter. Can we at least listen to a song from that film?
Yes, we can. Our next selection is The Lady in the Tutti Frutti Hat, part of a lengthy dance number involving, of course, bananas. It's from the 1943 musical The Gang's All Here.
I wonder why does everybody look at me and then begin to talk about the Christmas tree. I hope that means that everyone is glad to see the lady in the Tutti Frutti hat. The gentlemen, they want to make me say, see, but I don't tell them that, I tell them yes, sirree. And maybe that is why they come for dates to me, the lady in the Tutti Frutti hat. Some people say I dress too gay, but every day I feel so gay. And when I'm gay, I dress that way. Something wrong with that? No. Americans tell me that my hat is high because I will not take it off to kiss a guy. But if I ever start to take it off, I do that once for Johnny Smith, and he is very happy with the lady in the Tutti Frutti hat.
Welcome back to KBYS. I'm Amber Hale.
And I am Philippe Girard. You are listening to Your Grammar Rocks, a program on the lives of famous women in history, brought to you by the History Department at McNeese State University.
Today we're retracing the life of Carmen Miranda. We just listened to The Lady in the Tutti Frutti Hat, which she recorded at the height of her popularity in Hollywood.
By the end of World War II, she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood and a major movie star. But she had to make a number of compromises to get there, and many in Latin America just saw her as a tool.
In 1940, she returned to her homeland in Brazil, and the reception was rather cool. Rich Brazilians complained she had borrowed too heavily from the Afro-Brazilian music and costumes, and that she was portraying Brazil as a black country.
Others complained that she was playing the archetypical role of the Latina bimbo, the cantina girl who is there to be coveted by Anglo men, but likes a mind of her own. And of course, it did not help that her English was limited at first, and so she rarely said more than a few lines of dialogues in movies in which she appeared.
During one concert in Brazil, she sang a song from the controversial film Down Argentine Way, but she had to leave the stage when the audience booed her.
She responded with the song Bananas is My Business, which was her own way of silencing her critics. But the attacks dug deep, and she did not return to Brazil for another 14 years. Like many immigrants, she was a woman between two cultures. She was no longer seen as genuine in Brazil, but she would forever be considered foreign in the U.S.
As an immigrant yourself, do you identify with her?
I sure do. I've been living in the U.S. since 1997, and every time I return to France, I realize that the country of my birth is becoming more and more foreign to me. And yet, even though I'm now a U.S. citizen, I'll never be fully American.
Didn't you have to take a citizenship test?
I sure did, but luckily it was about U.S. history, not about American football. Otherwise, I would have flunked. Another classic dilemma for ambitious stars is how much are you willing to compromise your integrity to get a part? You can accept any part even if it means that you make a mockery of everything you believe in. Or you can stand tall and proud, but then languish in obscurity.
Like Ryan Gosling in La La Land?
Exactly. Today we are delving into some very deep philosophical questions, all that based on musicals.
Before our listeners' brains explode, can we take another musical interlude?
Sure. My next selection is a true Brazilian classic, Aquarela do Brasil, initially composed by Ari Barroso. It's been covered many times, and this version is by Gal Costa.
Brasil, meu Brasil brasileiro, meu mulato insoneiro, vou cantar-te nos meus versos. O Brasil samba que dá bamboleio, que faz gingar. O Brasil do meu amor, terra de nosso Senhor. Brasil, pra mim, pra mim, pra mim. Cortina do passado, tira a mãe preta do cerrado, bota o rei Congo no congado. Brasil, pra mim, deixa cantar de novo o trovador, a mericória, a luz da lua, toda a canção do meu amor. Caminhando pelos salões, arrastando o seu vestido rendado. Brasil, pra mim, pra mim, pra mim. Brasil, terra boa e gostosa, da morena cestrosa, de olhar indiscreto. O Brasil samba que dá bamboleio, que faz gingar. O Brasil do meu amor, terra de nosso Senhor. Brasil, pra mim, pra mim, pra mim. Oh, esse coqueiro que dá coco, onde eu amarro a minha rede, nas noites claras de luar. Brasil, pra mim. Ah, ouve essas fontes murmurantes, aonde eu mato a minha sede e onde a lua vem brincar. Ah, esse Brasil lindo e trigueiro é o meu Brasil brasileiro, terra de samba e pandeiro. Brasil, pra mim, pra mim. Brasil, Brasil, pra mim, pra mim. Brasil.
Welcome back to Your Grandma Rocks. I'm Amber Hale.
And I am Philippe Girard.
We've spent our program today following the life of Carmen Miranda, the Brazilian actress and singer who found great fame in Hollywood during World War II, but was also accused of perpetuating stereotypes about Latin American women.
After the war, the formula began to grow thin. In 1945-46, she appeared in two more films, Dollface and If I'm Lucky, which performed poorly at the box office. The vogue for Latin American scenes was starting to wane, and it did not help that those two movies were low-budget features shot in black and white. Her acts always did better in Technicolor.
From that point forward, her career was in freefall. She could either do her usual shtick, which involved a broken English and banana dances, but the audience was growing tired of that. So she tried to transition to a more serious movie with real acting parts, but the audience didn't respond positively because that didn't fit their expectations.
And that was a common problem in Hollywood during the studio system. Actresses were typecast for a certain role, and it was difficult to move beyond that.
Her personal life wasn't going too well either. In 1947, she married a man named David Sebastian, but she suffered a miscarriage and the couple separated. But she was a devout Catholic, and so she refused to divorce even though their marriage had broken down.
Like a lot of stars, she sought comfort in smoking and alcohol and drugs, which took a toll on her heart.
In 1955, she shot a part for the Jimmy Durante Show on NBC. She struggled to finish her act, and that same night suffered a fatal heart attack.
She was 46 years old.
Her body was flown to Brazil, where the public was torn over how to respond to her. She had been a major star in Brazil, and she was by far the best-known Brazilian overseas. But she had done so by cheapening some aspects of Brazilian culture, including the samba and carnaval, even as she made them famous worldwide.
Here's what Caetano Veloso, a Brazilian musician, had to say about her. Quote, "For generations of musicians who were adolescents in the second half of the 50s, Carmen Miranda was the first a cause of boast, pride, and shame, and a symbol that inspired the merciless gaze we began to cast upon ourselves. To think of her is to think about the complexity of this relationship." Unquote.
Still, 500,000 people attended her funeral in Rio, and as years passed, public opinion overwhelmingly embraced her. For the Carnival in Rio, many women now dress in the Bahamian costume that she made famous. There is also a museum in her honor in Rio, and the closing ceremony of the 2016 Olympics included a special tribute to her career.
She's become an icon in the US as well, not just as a kitschy character that drag queens love to impersonate, but also for Middle America. She's appeared on a series of stamps honoring Latin American legends, and the Library of Congress has archived several of her songs and movies as particularly significant from a cultural point of view.
Do we have time for one last song?
We do. Our last selection is a classic samba with a modern hip-hop twist. Here's Mas Que Nada by Sergio Mendes.
Black of bees came to make it hotter. We beat the fire starter, bubbling up just like lava, heated like a sauna, penetrating through your body armor. Rhythmically we massage ya, with hip hop mixed up with samba, So yes, y'all. You know we never stop, we never rest, y'all. The black of bees will keep it funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all, Say yeah. Which have rock rhymes, 1, 2, 3, 4, several times. Heavy rotation played by every kind. Radio station blessing every mind. We crossing boundaries like every day. You Bobby, in the on the bay. We got tab magnification, tab magnify like every day. Yes, y'all. You know we never stop, we never rest, y'all. The black of bees will keep it funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all, Say yeah.
Be my daily operation. Gotta put in work in this crazy occupation. Gotta keep it moving. That's the motivation. Gotta ride the waves and keep a tight relation with my team. Keep it moving and doing it right. Up in the lab every day till daylight. That's the way things move in this monkey business.
We took an old samba song and remixed it.
Mas que nada, sai da minha frente que eu quero passar. Pois o samba está animado. Eu quero é sambar. Este samba é misto de maracatu. É samba de preto veio, samba de preto tu.
Mas que nada.
We gon' make you feel hot. The beats and Sergio Mendes eating up samba.
Sergio play your piano. Sergio play yo.
This was Masquerada by Sergio Mendes. My name is Philippe Girard.
And I'm Amber Hale. This edition of Your Grandma Rocks retraced the life of Brazilian singer Carmen Miranda.
Merci, and thank you for joining us.
This program was funded by a Juliet Hardner Grant for Women in the Humanities. For more information on how to help finance fellowships at McNeese, contact the Foundation at 337-475-5588.
This program was also sponsored by the History Department at McNeese. To apply for a degree in history or maybe biology, contact the McNeese Admissions Office at 337-475-5504.
Goodbye.
Au revoir.